Hey guys, I'm Jake, and welcome to Kings and Queens of Miniature Castles.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. Today with me we have Ben Wilson, a district leader for Kwik Trip. For those of you guys who don't know, Kwik Trip is a regional gas station that has, convenience store that has a pretty loving following here in the Upper Midwest. Ben, take us through being a district leader. What does that look like?
So, being a district leader for Kwik Trip, I get the chance to work with 17 different retail convenience stores. And so I'm responsible for those stores and the people who work in them. And that goes anything from dealing with people to helping with growing sales to taking care of the stores and giving feedback. And so about everything on a day-to-day basis of running a convenience store, we get involved in.
You've been talking about being a convenience store. What is the difference between a gas store or?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's perspective. Some of it is our footprint and what we offer. You could even say, just by what we offer in our stores, we maybe resemble more of a corner grocery store that also has gas. Gas is certainly a big part of our business because everybody needs it, but it's not the focal point of everything we do. We put a lot of emphasis on groceries that we sell within the store, on food products that we sell in the store, and even ready-to-eat food products that we have available for guests in our store. So I think that makes it a big difference where in a gas station, the things that you purchase inside the store are maybe secondary, where for us that's the primary, and the gas is more secondary.
Which is I think something that sets Kwik Trip apart from a lot of other places, that you guys have a very ground up mentality when it comes to producing all the stuff that you sell. The majority of the stuff that you sell in stores. How has that looked with? Think about how do I phrase this? With having a very ground up mentality. How does that work with taking charge of all of that? Like, do you have any specific role in any of that, or are you mostly overseeing like the people?
Yeah, so we're responsible for everything that happens in the store. So for everything from the people that work there to how we stock everything in the store, making sure that we have enough product to sell, we have it out there and available for guests. As a company, I think you kind of hit on it. We call it vertical integration, where for many of our products, we're not relying on an outside supplier to bring us bread or bring us milk. Because we're a vertically integrated company, we have our own production facilities that make those.
Yeah, I think because most of the stuff is coming in daily deliveries with the trucks from your production facility to all your stores in the area. There's not any stores that aren't like uh, on that truck line, right?
For the most part, we have daily delivery. We've started doing some stores that are 6-day delivery, where we take 1 day off. But that's just because we found that we can be pretty efficient with it and we have enough space to store enough product for that one extra day. But for the most part, stores are getting milk in every day. They're getting bread in every day. So that product is about as fresh as it gets. And so it's really neat to see that, where you can have a milk truck from a farm pull up to our facility in La Crosse. Our dairy takes that, processes, bottles that milk. It's then shipped out to a store maybe within 1 day to 2 days.
Which is pretty sick to think about. All, especially when you consider all of the people that need to be involved with all the technology involved with it. Your bakery facility is pretty top of the line as well, isn't it?
Yes, and I can speak to just an outsider's perspective. That's not my area of expertise, but we have two bakeries in La Crosse, and state of the art bakeries that produce all of our bread, buns, our sweet goods like donuts, muffins, and all those types of things are produced right here in the La Crosse area in our two bakeries.
That's awesome. I think one of the questions that I even had too was, as you're doing all of this, someone was asking like, how do you implement an effective change of command? Because you're what somewhat in the middle when it comes to the hierarchy of like administration.
It, yeah, I mean, from a standpoint of, are you talking chain of command or?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, when it comes to it, so we are responsible for the stores, and then as district leaders, each store has its own store leader that reports directly to us, and they are responsible for basically all the operations of that store that they're in charge of. And we try to give them a lot of latitude to run it as if they owned it, and take pride and ownership in what they're doing. And so those store leaders would report to myself, and then I report to a zone leader, and that person usually deals with 6 to 7 of districts, which would be my responsibility. Um,
And then
eh,
how many stores are in it, or like how many of these stores are in your district?
so my district right now has 17 stores. I think the typical district ranges from anywhere from 13 to 17 stores.
And then do you have to like within a week, are you traveling to all of those stores, or how are you effectively kind of keep in touch?
Yeah, we monitor a lot of things with the stores. Some are a little more self sufficient depending on experience of the leader that's there. So we may spend a little less time there. We'll focus our time on where it's needed the most. So we may visit one or two stores multiple times in a week because there's a lot going on there that they could use more support. But there might be a store that we might not see but once every 2 to 3 weeks.
And I think like okay, so quick fun fact about me. So I used to work for Kwik Trip back in the day.
I remember.
Uh that's right. That's right. You were the district leader even at that
Yep.
time. Um but I know like I was over at a different store for a little bit, and like we had our own district leader at the time, and sometimes he'd come in and all of a sudden we're all like, "Oh my gosh, he's here." And then like that like fear and like a little bit of like um just some trepidation of like having your boss's boss kind of coming in to kind of overview like all your work. And there's always that like just you weren't necessarily excited for them to be there, but then like going into the store that I was at in La Crosse, and like all of a sudden like I'd have like my coworkers talking. They're like, "Oh hey, yeah, Ben Wilson is coming in." And I'm like, "What? Like why do you not seem like afraid? Like why are you actually excited?" So I don't know. There's just something about your presence and just how you interacted with everybody that kind of like took away any of the nervousness. I think for the most part, and like I even remember like I don't know, a few weeks in, I think you already knew my name, and like I felt like I was able to have a connection with you the times that you did come, which is super weird to think about, especially recognizing that you had you know 16, 17 plus stores plus all those different employees, and some people would think, oh, hey, he was just looking at your name tag. But I didn't always have my name tag. I wasn't always the best employee, but he still knew it. He still knew it. So thank you for
Yeah.
that, I guess, taking that fear.
Yeah, and so it's interesting. I think there's still some of that trepidation. I some of it just is that it's a title, and it's someone that's in a leadership position. I think that's people tend to get nervous. It's unfortunate, but I think that happens. Um, I think there's a lot of district leaders within Quick Trip, and I think most of us make an effort to, um, we enjoy what we do because of the people we work with. For me, I that's just my natural bent. I enjoy people. I enjoy getting to know people. When I go into a store, I enjoy just as much talking to a part-time coworker that just started as I do talking to the store leader, and just seeing what's your background, what are you wanting to do. um, I enjoy that. I think it builds good relationships, which allows us to do things that, if it's just a disconnected relationship, is harder to make things happen. And so for me, that's something I try consciously to do, but I enjoy that aspect of it.
Yeah. Like, because even, as I slowly moved up, becoming a food service leader in the kitchen there, I just remember, like, you know, there was such a difference between like having some random like boss's boss telling me that I needed to do stuff for the kitchen versus like, hey, Ben is asking like for this to happen, or like this is the new information. And it wasn't always you. It was Caitlin. Uh, nope, nope. Who was I'm blanking on her name. Her-
Kristen.
Kristen. Yeah. And Kristen would come in and she had that same mentality of like, hey, this is Kristen like asking to do stuff, and it made me much more affable, I guess, to doing it and complying with it versus like, gosh, like someone from administration just telling me to do all these other things now. And it was just, yeah, it made like a far more positive workplace environment, I'd say. Um,
I think that's one of the most underrated things we have, responsibilities that we have as leaders, is to create an environment like that. And simply acknowledging people and getting to know people goes a long way in establishing relationship, making people feel um, like they belong, making people feel like what they do matters, and helping them to realize that. I think that's something as leaders we should do often and do more than we do now.
I think kind of dolphin tailing off that. I don't know if that's a phrase, but I'm gonna make it. Let's look back into how you got into the position you're at now. Did you go to college? If so, like what were you going to college for?
Yeah, so I think I started with Kwik Trip as a part-time coworker 2 weeks after I graduated high school. And so I worked at Kwik Trip while I was going to college at UW La Crosse. And at that time, I was studying sociology. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I had some ideas. Um, and so I I ended up not finishing my degree at UWL. I had met who is now my wife while we were at UWL. We got married. We had our first child, and when we were expecting our first child, I looked at the standpoint of I need to support my family, and I applied for and was put into a store leader role for Kwik Trip, and I left school at that point to do that.
Did you so quick side note here. So for positions within a store, you have your guest service coworker, uh, entry level position. You have your what
You have a
shift lead.
yep, a shift leader, guest service leader. You would have an assistant store leader now. You have a store leader. At that time, we didn't have assistant store leaders, and so that wasn't a position at that time, which was a few years ago. And so, so from that point, I was get what would be a guest service leader, and I had applied for and was given a store leader position. Um, so I left school. We moved, and I became a store leader for Kwik Trip. And so from that point, I was a store leader in a couple different stores throughout a couple different areas, and we moved around a little bit. Um, and I had the opportunity to move into more district management at one point in my career. And so I moved into what's called a food service district leader role, which is they focus on just specific aspects of our food program at Kwik Trip, and help out several different district leaders or two different district leaders with that aspect of the business. And I worked in that role, and then was able to move into the district leader role that I'm in now about 11 years ago.
Okay. Yeah, I did not know that. I just always assumed that like same kind of like funnel that is currently used, but what's been happening for a long time now.
Mhm.
But with all these transitions and stepping into all these different leadership roles, was there? Would you say there was a lot of training that prepped you up for this, or was there
Mhm.
kind of a large learning?
I think there's a learning curve. I think the business has changed tremendously from the time I moved into a store leader role to where it is now, because we've added more on, we've developed a lot of things. But we have a pretty substantial training program that I went through moving into that leadership role. And then honestly, a lot of what you get is by working with other people who have the experience, by asking questions, by um, there's technical skill, but then the leadership aspect, there's a lot of feedback and support that we get, whether from its peers, from our peers, or from support staff in our support center.
Would you say that's going to kind of be the norm now for anyone who's looking to enter into your position sometime to go through that route?
Yeah, I would say our retail operations at Kwik Trip has a pretty good structure and a really defined structure of how to move forward and move up within the company. And there's a lot of opportunities that come up for people. We usually hire people into what's an assistant store leader role, and then they would move from there, most likely into that store leader. Um, from there, it would go to a food service district leader, and then to the position that I'm in as a district leader. And there's a few add-on tasks that can be added to that, like a training store leader is a position that can be done that helps train some of the new assistants. That's something that people can do as well.
And then you also have the cast, right?
Yep.
Sometimes we'll go from assistant store leader to cast store leader.
Yep, and that's just it's kind of like a floating assistant store leader that kind of that jumps in and helps at different stores that just need more help during that time if they're short on people or there's things going on that they just need more support.
So it looks like, yeah, there's been a lot of structure. There's a lot of thought that's behind a lot of the things that Quick Trip does. Um, do you have any role in like kind of creating this, or are you just uh, kind of like handed a lot of this stuff? I guess another way to phrase this, like, uh, do you have any effect with like the hiring process for like a lot of the store leaders, assistant store leaders? Where does where's
Yeah,
your role?
so in my district, I have some hand in all the hiring that's done, and so for coworkers being hired into a store, I eventually approve the hire that the store leader wants to make. When it comes to the leadership roles, we take a more direct, involved um, part in that. So I have a part in interviewing and selecting, making a job offer to anybody moving into an assistant store leader role. And then the same with the store leader role. We get to interview and select who moves into that role. And there is some support and there's some follow up interviews. So my supervisors, that's something we talk about who's going to go into those roles. Um, and sometimes, depending on his knowledge of the candidates, he'll interview them as well. So it's kind of a joint venture um, between myself and the food service district leader I work with, and another district leader that I work with pretty closely. We usually talk through all those decisions, knowing that all of us have a background in knowing the individuals and what impact they can have on a specific role.
And then yeah, looking at that, what are you looking for? in your hiring.
Some of the biggest things is we look for our core values in candidates. I think experience and specific technical experience can be helpful, but there's a lot of things that we can teach people to do. It's really hard to teach values. So when you look at things like honesty and integrity, work ethic, um, being adaptable, being innovative, it's really those are things that it's hard to teach those things. So we look for people who possess those qualities. And depending on the role we're hiring for, we look for people who maybe have the traits to fit that need.
And I think like something that like a lot of people think about is how much money is spent, like not only during the hiring process, but during the training process of assistant store leaders, especially if you're taking them from outside of Quick Trip. Um, how much money like is spent on that?
I don't know specific numbers. I know that I think in any company, in any role, um, it's an investment in people when you hire someone. There's a monetary investment that goes into it. Um, and I would tell you, I think in most places that, especially places that have good people, um, it costs a lot more to try and bring a new person in than it does to retain someone. So there's a lot of effort to make sure we're setting people up for success, and that we are being able to retain people. And I think as a company, we're very successful at that, especially in comparison to other companies.
Yeah, I think that's like good to think about because I don't, even like when I was working there, I saw like a lot of I personally I gave it like 50-50 if like someone came in from out of Quick Trip, like how long they'd like last, and out of all right, this person they seem all right. Like I think yes, but um along with that, like how do you handle it when a new hire is not what you're looking for? And, hiring has already happened. Like, are you giving them a few months of leeway, or to try to figure that out, or like what does that look?
Yeah, we do some initial kind of entry evaluation, where there's a kind of an evaluation period when someone first starts. Depending on the position, is dependent on the length of that, where we kind of see if it's going to be a job fit. We go over a full evaluation with them and talk through where they're at. The big thing with any of those, whether it's in that first few months or whether it's the annual evaluation appraisal that we do, the goal is that that's never really a surprise to the person we're talking to. Um, and so we want to make sure we're having conversations on a regular basis as things come up. So we give people the opportunity to adjust if things aren't going quite right, or keep doing what they're doing if things are going well, um, because we want them to be successful. So we want to give them every opportunity to be successful.
Yeah, 'cause I remember the intention of a lot of both store leaders that I had, just of checking in with me first life, um, just making sure that I was doing well, so that and I think that was super impactful for like just recognizing what a good workplace environment. Going back into your position as a whole, though, can you give us a snapshot of like what your daily interaction?
One of the fun things about my job is that there's really no 2 days that are alike, and so the best time that I can spend doing my job is spent visiting my stores and being able to see what's going on in the stores, to give feedback, give praise, to talk through what kind of support is needed for the store, what I can do to help them. So a tremendous amount of that time is dedicated to just being in the stores, um, alongside the leaders, alongside the coworkers, and finding out what they need to get to be successful in what they're doing, to make sure everybody is feeling supported, and to hit the goals that we want to hit as a company.
With all that, it sounds like it definitely would be beneficial to be extrovert rather than introvert. Would you say that's where you lean, or kind of?
I'm definitely an extrovert, and so yes, I think there's aspects of being an extrovert in our business is definitely helpful. But even if there's some you're somewhat introverted, I think you can be very successful at it too. It's just recognizing how to connect with people. I would say I'm an advocate of that, the idea that the way I approach things works well for me. Someone else may do things just as effectively, but approach it a different way because that's their personality. That's the strengths that they have. And so, but being an extrovert, I think does help because we're a very people oriented business.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. I think that's what was hard for being introvert as well. But I was in the kitchen, so that really helped a lot.
Yeah.
I was able to kind of just focus in on doing other random side stuff, and then like then being collected from that, being able to go out and then talk to customers and be somewhat happy.
Mm.
Go back the protection of that was always. If any of you guys ever have to do that, or like definitely go into it's get to
That's
talk
right.
to all your friends all the time, and then actually do some. Um. All right. So let's talk about some of the what are some highs and lows of being in.
I would say highs and lows probably are the same thing for me. In the sense that the people I work with are the highs. The relationships that I get to make, the seeing people succeed and grow in what they do, that is definitely a high for me. Um, I think it's one of the things I enjoy the most. And so, in the low, also has to do with the people side of things, in the sense that the hardest part of my job is that there are times when you have to address things with people that people don't want to hear. And sometimes that goes so far as, unfortunately, at times that there are conversations that lead to someone not working there. And I would tell you that that's the people side of the business too. Um, but that's the hardest part, because you're having an impact on someone. And so those are the highs and lows for me. And so both of them dealing with people.
That. Uh, um, um, along with that though, like how was how was COVID for you guys as both a company and like how did that affect you guys?
I think the big thing with COVID, that was an impact was that we had to constantly be agile in what we were doing and how we approach things in the store, knowing that there were going to be mandates and changes and things coming down very rapidly, because it was a very rapidly changing environment. And I think there was more knowledge every single day, and just trying to make sure we were doing things effectively, but also taking care of our coworkers as much as we can, but still being there for the communities and guests that we serve. We were definitely an essential business. We provide groceries, food, fuel, and we stayed open all through COVID. We did not close. I think we were extremely busy because I think people felt more comfortable coming into our stores at times, maybe because it was a little bit faster of a visit, versus maybe a larger store. So there were a lot of challenges. I think we found some things that we can do well. I think we learned a lot of things. Probably the biggest thing we just reinforce is we have a lot of really good people that work at Kwik Trip, because we had to change things on a dime. We had to make adjustments on a dime. People helped their fellow coworkers out by picking up shifts because someone got sick or was exposed. So I think during a very tense time, our coworkers did just an amazing job.
On a like more personal, like did that time period like leave, or was it um did it kind of work wise?
It was more exhausting. I think, and I think the exhausting part, and I think all of the leaders and coworkers would tell you this is, it's just not knowing what tomorrow is going to bring. So like when you're in a rhythm of things, it gives you some peace of mind to be able to, yep, this is what's coming tomorrow. This is what's going to happen. Throughout COVID, you could have in the blink of an eye, 5 or 6 coworkers that had to be quarantined. Well, now you don't know who's going to work tomorrow afternoon. And so I think it was that constantly being on the knife's edge, not knowing what is going to happen in the next hour or tomorrow. And so that added a lot of stress, a lot of tension, which I think when you're under that constantly just makes you more mentally exhausted.
And in that state, what kept you grounded? How were you able to kind of breathe through it all?
We had a lot of support, and I think we saw as we went through it, there were times that were more tense than others. But the reality of it is we had a lot of great people who really stepped up. And that was probably is looking for the encouraging portion of things was versus, hey, we're down a lot of people. It was really good to look at the side of it where I could focus on, man, look at how awesome these people did who stepped into the breach and took some things over.
Were you able to, like, post COVID, was there anything like for like any of the district leaders, people pause and take a break from anything, or was it just kind of like, like specifically after like the lockdown, like when the stuff would have been most stressful?
Yeah, I think it was. I don't know that we really had just a specific letdown. I think that as things eased up and more evened out, as people had time, they took time off, they took time away, um, and then they encouraged others to do the same. But I think it's really been kind of there hasn't been a specific we're through it. So
Do you think like, I guess it's prepped you guys as a company, uh, and as a bunch of different businesses to be able to take on any next challenges that come up as well, I'm sure. Um, Speaking of challenges, outside of COVID, what have been some things that have kind of helped you personally grow as a district leader, and what are some things that have like just uh, challenged you a lot as well?
yeah, for my personal growth, I think the the interesting thing about working at Kwik Trip is nothing is ever stagnant. It doesn't stay the same because we're constantly looking to improve. And so the knowledge that we're able to um, grow in is constant because there's always something new that we're learning. There's also always a new aspect of the business that we're learning about and we're growing in. So for me, I find a lot of those things very interesting. So I kind of thrive on that and in learning about some of those new aspects, which just builds kind of a broader spectrum of knowledge and abilities and gives you confidence in what you're doing. So that's been good for me. I think I've been challenged in a lot of different things. For me personally, I think you're my personality is one of being a people person and enjoying people, which is awesome in my role because it's a people business. But one of the challenges is every personality where it has its strengths, it also has things that aren't as strong that you have to recognize. And so for me, in being in a leadership role and knowing that I have to push the envelope at times to make sure people are staying within the boundaries or doing what they should, means I have to lean in a little bit when there's confrontation and things like that. And that's something I've had to challenge myself in and grow in over the years.
Yeah, like what did that, like,
I think there's always a time where we're leaders, and the reason we have a job is because there needs to be guidance and structure. And so if everybody just walked in the door and did everything exactly correct, I it probably wouldn't need me around. And so, but that makes it interesting, but it also means that there's going to be times where you have to kind of give feedback, and sometimes feedback isn't easily received. None of us like to hear that we're not doing things correctly. And then we all react differently to that feedback. So, um, knowing that at times people are going to push back, and people will, um, even at times make decisions that you have to call them out on. Um, those that leads to confrontation and sometimes hard feelings, and I think that's something that you have to recognize as part of the job of being a leader. Um, Not because you want to be vindictive or mean to anybody, but your role is to not just cater to one person, but to make sure you're taking care of everyone. And sometimes that means calling out behavior in others.
And how do you keep that like on like whether you're actually vindictive or whether coming from professional?
That's one of the hardest things to do, because I think there's a lot of emotion that can come into certain situations. I think when things are tense, I think sometimes people will say things that are hurtful because they don't like the feedback they're getting. So it's really hard to keep it focused on. I need to focus on the behavior that's in front of me. We have a really good support network that we can call on to walk us through some of the situations, especially the more tense ones. So it's not like I'm making things up as I go. And so I have a lot of support so that we're consistent, that we do things well. Um, and not just for me to do things well, but to make sure that we're looking out for those people that we're talking to, that we're giving them every opportunity to be successful.
Speaking of success, what are some things that you have done that has set you up for success, being where you're at?
Um, I'll be honest with you. I think I'm just really fortunate, and so I've been pretty blessed to be in the position that I'm in. Um, and if there's anything that I could attribute it to is, and what I would tell you is surround yourself with good people, because they make doing the right thing a lot easier. And it makes getting things done a lot easier, especially when things are hard. And so I've been really blessed to work with a lot of really good people, um, over the years and currently. So I think really my success is more, anything that I've done that's successful, it has been really the success of others that I've just been fortunate to be around.
I feel it. All right. Um, but yes. All right. Tell me more about this, Ben. Give me the.
Well, I mean, the reality of it is, I'm one person. Me individually, I cannot do all the things that it takes to be successful. I have to rely on other people. I mean, that's my job. And so I would tell you that my job is made infinitely easier when there are really good people there, because they're doing things really well. So in a sense, it you can call it what you will, but it really is like my success is really other people's success, that I get to be around, and so which is pretty cool.
I think that's like an important lesson to be able to just like learn in my own life. Like so often with like everyone wants to be that guy is kind of carrying the company on their or carrying their sports team on their backs. You know, like they want to be that linchpin. Um, when so often it actually has to be more of a group effort. But yeah, I think the classic is but there isn't win. So
Yeah. Well, and the hard part about it that I think with that is I think you can do that a lot of different ways. Um, for me, I think one of the things I've had to learn, and I didn't always do it well, and I probably have times where I don't do it well now, is that I can I can work with people and have people that report to me, and I can maybe need to let go of, well, I wouldn't do it exactly that way. I by no recognizing that, hey, they're more successful by doing it that way, so I should let them do it that way, as long as it's within the parameters of what's right, of course. But letting go of just because it's not the way I would do it, doesn't make it wrong, because it gives people the opportunity to kind of thrive in what they are good at. Um, and I think that's probably one of the biggest things I can do in the position I'm in is to let go of some of that stuff and let people be successful.
you'd say uh, supervisor. Okay, just let him,
Yeah, it's not my style to be a micromanager. And so I would much prefer to have really good people and allow them to do it and then provide them support. If I can be there, what do you need me to do? What do you need my help with? And at times there's still going to need to be, hey, we're going to have to redirect this a little bit and maybe change course. Um, but you end up doing a lot less of that and a lot more of, hey, how do I support you and allow you to be successful?
yeah, I think I've switched from being large, switch small back. You know what? Why am I even going? Hell. And then with all this leadership, you get to practice it out both at work, but you also have to practice it at home. What does that look like? Because you're a family guy.
Yeah, I have a family and a pretty large family. So um, I have 7 children, and a wife who's amazing. And so, uh, yeah, I think that's always a constant battle with work and home life, to make sure that you are balancing the two, where family should be extremely important and probably more important than work. But in the same sense, part of taking care of my family is going to work. And there's responsibilities to fulfill there too. I think for me, I think there's always a learning curve for anybody in figuring that out. I have not always been great with it, and that's been something I've had to adjust and learn. And I think in each family, what that adjustment is might look a little different, and what works for each family. Um, I am fortunate where I work. I work at a company that has a tremendous amount of support behind its leadership, which means you're not trying to do it all by yourself. So there is the ability to take time away. There is the ability to be able to relax and to be able to, um, spend time and focus time on my family. So I've been really fortunate that way.
Um, would you say that you have a work personality and at home life personality? Because I know, like for myself, like at work, I'm like very task oriented. Like I have all my goals. I have like time limits set for myself, or I did. I at Quick Trip where I just was like, all right, this at this time, this at this time, this. Time. Very what's the word I'm looking for? I was very intentional, I guess, with my time. It's kind of like managing everything. Versus at home where I'm just I- and like I don't know. It took me like 2 years to realize that I have two very distinctive personalities, and there's like pros and cons to both of them. But like trying to figure out how I can actually meld them into one cohesive personality. But does any of that like sound familiar to
In some ways, yes. I think there's a lot of things where I see the similarities of how I act in both places, but I think naturally, home is a place that um, has, you know, no matter how good Quick Trip is, like home has, and my family has